Hey everybody, it's Marcy here at All Star, and this month for the newsletter we were going to discuss tequila and mezcals. There's so much information about them. Tequila has turned into one of my favorite spirits to drink, and I have my husband Jed to thank for that. I, like most people, have had a bad experience on Jose Cuervo when I was in college. Okay, maybe possibly before college. But anyways, I had a bad experience with tequila, and it turned me off to drinking it for years. And when I met my husband, he told, tequila is his favorite thing. And he told me that if we were going to be together, I had to learn how to drink tequila. So in Mexico, he started taking me where we would go and have tequila flights and try all different kinds. And I have to say that what I discovered was that tequila has actually become one of my favorites because it's complex, it's different, there's tons of different varieties to it. And when you're drinking real tequila, it's very different than what most people think of. I guess the best way to start is to say that there is also a difference between tequila and mezcal. All tequilas are mezcals, but not all mezcals are tequilas. If that makes any sense. Probably doesn't. The real truth is that tequila is produced in 5 different states in Mexico, Jalisco being the most popular one because it has the town of Tequila in it. And in order to be a tequila by Mexican law, you either have to be 100% blue agave, or you can be, and that has to be printed on the front of your bottle. Kind of like when you look at these, it'll say the 100% puro agave. Look for that on there. That means it is actually 100% agave. Now, most of us have had an experience with this guy. Jose Cuervo is what they call a mixto. And a mixto is, by law, has to be 51% tequila and 49% other stuff. Usually it's some kind of like sugary, grain neutral something byproduct. Rum, vodka, kind of a combination of both. Who knows? But that's what goes into this. The coloring that you see in like Cuervo Gold or in a lot of tequilas that say gold on them is actual caramel coloring. There's no difference between this and the silver other than the caramel coloring and so the sugar that's added to it to give it that color. A true 100% agave tequila is going to be, you're going to have your silvers, your reposados, your añejos, and then your extra añejo. And there's also the joven, or joven I think is how they pronounce it. My Spanish is not that great. The truth is that with a blanco or a silver, the tequila has been aged anywhere between 1 to 60 days. Not very long. It's generally in stainless steel. All you're doing is resting it. And then it's bottled. For it to be called a reposado, it's 2 months up to 1 year. For it to be called an anejo, it's 1 year to 3 years. And to be an extra anejo, it is 3 years and above. Now, with the Joven method, with the Joven name, when they call it that, it's usually a blending of 2 of those age ranges, but just 2. Casa Dragones is a very good example of what I'm talking about. With Casa Dragones, when you open this up, you will see that it is actually clear. It's a sipping tequila and considered the world's finest. What's interesting about this is that it's got blanco tequila in it, but it's also got 5-year extra añejo that they've married together and then they've filtered for the clarity. So that's a really great example and probably one of the best examples of a Joven. When it comes to mezcals, they have 3 different definitions of ages, and they have the blanco, they have the reposado, and then they have the añejo. Again, blanco is 1 to 60 days of aging, and then bottling. The reposado is 2 months to a year, and the añejo, in their case, is a year or over. They don't have an extra añejo category as of yet. The other thing that's interesting, and people ask us all the time, what's the difference between tequila and mezcal? And ultimately, if you become a good, kind of a tequila drinker and a tequila connoisseur, mezcals are kind of the next step to it. And if you happen to be a whiskey or a scotch fan, but you've never really liked tequila, then I would definitely say the next time you're out at a bar, try a mezcal. Because a good quality mezcal is going to have some of those properties of a whiskey or a bourbon or a scotch that you might really like. The reason being is that there's a difference in how they produce the agave plant. So when they're getting the agave sugars out of it in tequila, they'll actually kind of either roast, or they'll not roast, but they'll bake or steam them in ovens that are above ground. For mezcals, and what makes it and kind of gives it the unique, like its unique flavor profile, is that they'll dig these in-ground pits, they'll put they'll put rocks in there, build a fire, heat the rocks for 24 hours, and then they put the agave hearts inside, like on top of those rocks, cover them up with this moist agave like fibers, and they roast them for 2 to 3 days. Now what that does is when it produces out the sugar, and what's left to make the wort and to ferment is basically this really smoky flavor that comes through in the agave, because of the way that they have treated the agave plant to get the sugar out of it. So when you try a mezcal, lots of times it has this smokiness and this complexity to it that you don't normally get off of a regular tequila. Most 100% agave tequilas can have like a citrusy or kind of a peppery start to them as they age, because of the fact that of the sugar, and also because of the temperatures that they're aging in. They have a tendency to take on the properties of the wood faster, because it's usually a hotter climate. Mexico is definitely, most people would agree, it's a hotter climate than what you're going to get maybe in Kentucky or what you're going to get in Scotland. And most of those barrels end up, because of that heat, you end up getting a lot more of the flavor that comes through in a faster process to the alcohol that's inside of it. So like a good 5-year extra añejo tequila is going to drink a lot like a bourbon, from the standpoint that it's not going to taste like what most people think tequila tastes like. And it's going to have complexity and toffee and kind of buttery caramel notes, much like you'd get out of a bourbon. So the other thing that's really fun when you start to get into tequilas is the fact that, like, right now there's a lot of really great ones out there. Casa Dragones being like the start to it, they make probably the best tequila I've ever had in my life. And after being married to my husband who owns All Star, I've gotten a chance to drink a lot of tequilas, but the Casa Dragones one is really fantastic. It's certainly like on the more expensive side at about, you know, 200 plus a bottle. But if you're a big tequila fan, it's definitely worth trying. I'm also a big fan of the Avion Silver Tequila, and also the Frida Kahlo Blanco, or Silver Tequila by Frida Kahlo. Both of these are really fantastic tequilas and examples of how good tequila can really be. When you get into like the reposados and the añejos, if you haven't gotten a chance to come by the store recently, we brought in a line and a family called Suerte, which is really fantastic, old school, like quality artisan tequila makers. And they use the Tejana method, which for most people they don't really realize what that is, but when after they've baked the agave plants, in order to get the juices out of them, they take this 2,000 pound wheel, and that's how they mash up the agave. It's very time consuming, but it's definitely worth it. That's kind of one of the interesting things I think about tequila, and mezcal the same. If you like craftsmanship, some of the larger tequila companies or mezcal producers have gone to more like modernized methods, but the truth is a lot of what tequila is still very like handcrafted, artisan from start to finish. There's still not a way to like pick agave plants out without actually being a guy that goes out and decides which agave plant to cut, and then cutting off the leaves in order to leave the heart of it. That's still a job that's done by a guy. And really, like, being able to pick the right agave plant, being able to know the sugar content, all those kind of things. The process of creating a great tequila is a very hands-on process, and the process of creating that mezcal is the same way. So if you're looking for something where somebody's kind of putting their heart and soul into it, a true 100% agave or 100% mezcal is a really good way to go. And one of the questions we always get asked is about the worm. So first of all, you won't find worms in the bottom of tequila. If you do, like, run and run quickly, because that's just not, worms are not supposed to be in the bottom of tequila. They never have been. Basically, the worms that were in the bottom of the mezcal were a marketing gimmick, and they were geared more towards US and Asian markets. It's not even actually a worm. It's an insect larva. It's either a caterpillar or it's this agave snout like insect, and it's basically the larvae for this. And so, as they point out when you read about it, if you see like a worm in the bottom of your mezcal, it's basically like the Jose Cuervo version of a mezcal. So just be a little bit cautious on that, because you might have a really good night and wake up with a really big headache and swear off mezcals for the rest of your life, and then miss out on a wide variety of mezcals that are fantastic. I hope this has been helpful. There is a lot of misconceptions about tequila and mezcal. If you come to the store, we'd be happy to talk to you, and if you find me, am always happy to like talk tequila, because like I said, it was my husband who got me started drinking it again, and it has turned into by far one of my favorite and go-to spirits that are out there. It's versatile, it's fun, it's got a unique flavor, and it's just really, if you get into it, a lot of the smaller ones have great stories behind it. So if you have any questions, stop by All Star, feel free to email us, and thanks for learning a little bit about tequila and mezcal with me.